All right, let's see. I think folks are joining. All right, let me make sure that we're in the right spot. All right, guys, if you can see me and if you can hear me, drop some comments inside of chat, some hand waves, some hellos. I want to make sure that you guys can hear and see us. Works. Manuel, Joe in the building. Ana, Daniel. What's up? What's up, people? What's up, people? We're here.
Mhm.
Angela's on stage with me. We're about to kick off here
Hi,
soon.
everyone. Oh,
Hey, Angela, how you feeling today?
I'm doing well, Roberto. How are you? Good to see you.
Doing good. Good to see you. Good to see you. Where are you joining us from right now? Just kind
Me?
of putting pins on the map. Yeah.
New York City.
New York in the building. San
Yeah.
Francisco. I'm in San
Yeah.
Francisco.
Oh, you're in San
I just
Francisco.
I
Okay.
I am. Yeah, yeah. I flew in from Puerto Rico last night, and
Okay.
I'm in San Francisco now. But inside of
Nice.
chat, I would love to hear where folks are joining us from. Just drop your location inside of chat while we get some more folks to join this panel combo. Bogota in the building, Mexico City, Seattle,
Nice.
Austin. Let's
Austin.
go. International. We got the
I
international
love that
squad.
this is international. This is fantastic. We got
Michigan.
Nebraska.
All right.
Nebraska in the
Nebraska's
building.
in the building. Nebraska's in the
Nice.
building. Fantastic. Fantastic. All right, cool. I think we can kind of get it going. What do you think, Angela?
Yep, let's do it.
Okay, let's go. Well, guys, first of all, thank you for jumping into our session. Thank you for giving us some of your time. Our hope is to make it as fruitful as possible. These next 40-ish minutes that we have together. We're also going to have time for Q&As. And so as we're having a conversation up here, we're going to be talking about a lot of different things. Your day job to dream job, career changes, carreras nuevas. We're going to get into it and highlight some of our stories, but also we want to make this interactive. So we want to hear some of your stories and perspectives as we're going through each of these topics. Um, and to kind of kick things off, I would love to introduce myself, but before I do that, some housekeeping things. On the right hand side, you're going to have these interactive tools. You have chat, you have polls, you have people, and Q&A. You'll see Q&A there when you have questions as they come up, whatever it might be. I'm from Philly as well. So if you have a question about which cheesesteak is the best cheesesteak, you can drop that in there. The
Pats, by the
different,
way.
hey, easy. We could talk about that. We could talk about it. So Q&A, drop questions in there as we're kicking things off, and let's get to it. Let's get to it. So, kind of introducing myself. My name is Roberto Ortiz. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Welcome. Welcome is a platform that enables employee engagement and virtual experiences across companies internally and externally. Um, my journey, just to kind of paint a picture, because we're talking about the career journey here. My journey is somewhat unconventional. My family's from Puerto Rico, born and raised in Philly, like in Philly, like deep Philly, and then from there moved to San Francisco. Was working at Google, leading design, built a company. It was acquired by Yahoo. Was there for a few years, a few startups in between. Now I'm the founder of the startup, and we're growing exponentially. We have 60 employees across the globe, fully remote, and we're building amazing technology. And there's a lot of packed into that I'm hoping to unpack here as we cover the different stages of optimizing your career, taking risks, when you're gonna hit a roadblock called fear, and what do you do? The dynamics of like even friends and family whispering in your ear, saying you're a little crazy for doing what you do, but that's all part of the journey. And so anyway, so that I hope that sets the stage for what we're going to talk about. I'll hand it over to Angela, who will introduce herself, and then we'll get into the meat of the combo.
Okay, great. Thanks, Roberto. So, hi, everyone. First of all, I'm super excited to be in conversation with you, Roberto. I think we're going to have a lot of fun. My name is
Yeah.
Angela Fisher. I'm originally from the Philadelphia area.
Let's
And
go.
but I am based in New York City. I'm also the founder of Newfluence, which is an inclusive micro influencer marketing platform. We help brands and startups collaborate with the largest community of diverse micro influencers and creators. As far as my background goes, I am a former talent executive that has launched influencer-driven brands for MTV, VH1, BET, on behalf of AMF Media, and I also served on the launch team for a network that's now called BET Her, where I was the head of talent or influencer relations. So as far that being said, my entire career has revolved around collaborations with celebrity level, ranging from celebrity level influencers, many of who you see today, to emerging level influencers. And I have worked with brands from McDonald's to Patreon. And so, yeah.
Fantastic.
Okay. The video went out for a second, so I was concerned.
Yeah. No, you're good. You're good.
Oh, Roberto, I have a quick thing. I think it might be cool to just share a fun fact about us, right? So I always like to share something, kind of outside of the career that people can, may find interesting. So I'll share one.
Okay.
One, I'm a distance runner, and I have completed one ultra marathon of 50K.
Wow. Okay, game on. You're gonna flex on me like that? I'm over here. I'm a pro. I can eat empanadas. I can probably eat empanadas better than anybody. But okay, two quick facts. One is that I'm a new dad. I have a 2-year-old little girl. She's my world. It's the best job I've ever had. And on the funner side of it, of a fun fact, I used to dance professionally. And I'll leave it there. I'll let the imagination flow. But yeah, it was a fun time back in the day.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Okay, we'll have to talk after.
That's right. Cool.
All right. So let's move into the session. So as Roberto said, this is about it's called Nuevas, Carreras. I'm adding the Cambio, right? And it initially said day job to dream job, but we're going to expand that out to entrepreneurship as well. And so in this session, we are talking about the unconventional journey, which is something that Roberto and I have both had. And, just looking back, the pandemic has caused us all to take a step back and evaluate our lives. And many of us have placed higher emphasis on being happy and being fulfilled. And so some of that happiness may be around a new career or a new business. And so one of the challenges, or one of the questions that typically arises when thinking of a new direction in general, is how do I transition? How do I pivot? Right. And so we're going through a few steps or a few ways through our own personal stories of how we can do that. And first off, it's, what are you passionate about? And transferable skills. So I'm going to toss it back to you, Roberto, because I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, no, good teeing it up. I just echo so much of that setup, where right now we're in a state of the world where a lot of folks reevaluate a lot of different things, right? Where you live, where you work, the values of the company that you work for. Is it gonna position you to win holistically, right? And that this introduction of holistically showing up as your whole self is, I would say that it's one of those new things that companies are embracing. In fact, us as folks that are working in companies and building companies is something that we're seeing that we have to double down on, right? And the idea that going to a job is no longer enough for folks, right? It's about believing that the job and the work that they're doing is actually going to give them growth potential, but also that's going to position their passions to thrive instead of putting you in a box per se, right? And so we'll get into this in a minute, but at a high level, when I think about passions and transferable skills, I go back to little Roberto, at 14 years old when I first walked into a computer lab and I fell in love with the machine. Before I was just a kid drawing and my notebook everywhere I went, whether it was on the L train to go downtown, whether it was on the block, I had my sketch pad with me. And I've always had this gift of illustration and creativity. And it wasn't until I walked into that computer lab that I said, you know what? Like, I want to bring that to the screen. And that was the birth of this new passion around design and technology for me. So much so that I back in the day, I used to go to the library and check out books of HTML and JavaScript and Photoshop. And I was that kid, right, that saved up money, bought my first machine, um, and used to use AOL disk to actually get access to the internet. I mean, I'm throwing it back, right? And so I think that, but it's important to understand, like, when you have those passions, when you uncover that passion, you just get this dose of energy that's like, I want to do more of this, right? And so when I think about transferable skills, I think about, and in the context of passions, I really think about those times when I was working in a space that allowed me to do my best work, which was really evident through the passions that I had being applied to a job to be done, right? And so I was at Lockheed Martin for a few years, for 10 years actually. And that's where I basically, um, first in, last out, flexing on the passion and really applying it to the job. And so when we talk about transferable skills, what it ended up doing, that time and those years of me really pouring, like letting my passions out on the table, it really built up a rich experience that would be very valuable in the market. And I didn't even realize that, right? The idea that I was just doing the work that I loved and learning more. And on the weekend, I would take this workshop and I would just continue to grow and develop. Well, all of that was stacking value in the market. And I didn't realize it then because I'm in just in one job doing all of this. And then when you peek your head out the window and kind of look at the other jobs around you, you're like, hold on, you're willing to give me this opportunity because I've been stacking these value, these passions that I have as transferable skills. Okay, cool. Now moving on to the next career or next position or next company. And so when you think about, Angela, when you frame the question around transferable skills and passion, that's exactly what comes to mind for me. There is like, like making sure that those passions are being cultivated, because and then they become the thing that you actually use to go from one place to another place.
I love it. I picture you as a young kid walking into the lab and seeing the computer, just falling in love with it. And
Yeah.
yeah, so it's a great story. So yeah, on my end, I've had a few. I'll just talk about a very top line, a few pivots. From being a financial analyst to an entertainment executive, from an entertainment executive to running an agency, and from running an agency to building Nuefluence. So, you're spot on with studying, having passion, because when I was a financial analyst, I, first I became one because it got me to New York. But my true passion was entertainment. And I just loved entertainment. I didn't know how I was getting into it, but I was going to do it. And so, one of the things that I did, so besides getting to New York, one of the capitals of the entertainment industry, I started studying the entertainment industry and roles within it. And then from there, I looked at some of my transferable skills. And so, one thing that's really interesting about transferable skills, they can date way back. So I pulled it out of college, working in fast food, customer service, for example. As a financial analyst, that actually translated to, client relations. And then in entertainment, that translated to or transferred to talent relations, celebrity
Mm.
relations. And so, so that's one experience from early in my career, that started me on the journey of making that transition, which was studying the industry as well as assessing the skills that I've already acquired that could apply to the industry. But later
Yeah.
in my career, with Nuefluence, it became about not only studying tech, because unlike you, I didn't grow up, immersed in tech as much. So I really had to learn. And part of that learning was attending conferences and talks. And then in terms of transferable skills, I knew what I wanted to do with Newfluence because I've been passionate about working in this area of the industry for many years. So it's taking those skills, but even as a founder, there's other skills that you can take from, your role in corporate America, like, managing teams, right? So that's the same thing you have to do as a founder, as well as, for me, it was marketing tips, what I've learned in marketing or audience analysis. So these were the roles that I brought to being a founder for Newfluence.
Angela, I want to go back a little bit to the point in which you recognized that you had to move from the city that you were in order to get more of those transferable skills, right? Because a lot of folks, and I know for a lot of folks, this is Hispanic Heritage Month, and I know in La Familia Mia, my Latin Puerto Rican mom of 5 kids, you get the guilt trip right away. As soon as you start to think about I'm moving to another spot, even if you're moving down the street and around the corner, it feels like, oh, it's too far, right? And so when you're moving from one coast to another coast or from one city to another city, it's for that opportunity so that you can get into entertainment, so that you can get more transferable skills, so that you can broaden your network. What was that thought process for you and also your loved ones to say, you know what, deuces, we got FaceTime. I can FaceTime you at any point, but I'm gonna go to the big city?
It's an interesting point because for me, I think I was warming my family up for 2 years. I was literally saying, before I graduated college that I wanted to be in New York. And as, when I was younger, I was already, I'm from slightly outside of the Philadelphia area, but I was already going to Philadelphia, because I love the city. And so by the time I made that transition, they were all prepared for it. But however, I do understand your perspective though, because I had a summit between with my mom, grandmother, and aunt when I decided to leave finance and go into entertainment because I was making good money. And they were like, they just couldn't understand why I wanted to make that transition because I was making good money. And in their minds, finance was like, that's where you need to be.
It takes me back to, and those are the hard conversations, and we're going to get into that in the third pillar of our combo, right? Which is like the roadblocks or the fear, and the fear not just that you're considering as you're progressing your career, but the fear that is brought onto you from people that love you as well. All right, like I remember being at Lockheed Martin, and you got the 401k, you got the pension, you got the whole, and for where I'm from, like you made it. Like what? You got this job, you got it's like you're good. And in my head, I was always like, you know what? But there's more. There's more. There's more to this. There's more potential. There's more opportunity. The question is, am I willing to make the move? Am I willing to take the risk? Right. But on the other side of that is where opportunity is. And I know we'll get into that. But it's interesting how, like your family sat you down and you had to say, you know what, guys, yes, like this is amazing, but this is where I'm going and taking the risk.
Yeah. Tell us about your moment, because I know, when we spoke outside of, privately, you were telling me about your mom and, just really wanting you to stay. And so what was that like for you?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, for me, it was a lot of it is, it's cultural, but it's also circumstantial. I think like when you have family that's just going through a rough patch or you're the helping hand, like you're the one that is showing up and helping and supporting a family member, or the one that helps sort of, you feel like you're the glue and kind of getting the social side of the family together and all these things. And so it felt very heavy. In fact, I remember I'm gonna paint a picture. We were in Cherry Hill. We went out to the Cheesecake Factory, believe it or not. Yeah. yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah. Anyway, so Cheesecake Factory to kind of have this dinner, and it's like, hey, we're actually going to be moving. Like tomorrow, I'm moving to San Francisco from Philly to San Francisco, and
Mm.
I tell you what, in the parking lot when we left dinner and got in the car, there was this knot in my throat that it was just like you couldn't even shake it. It felt like it really felt like you were just like detaching yourself from your family in a significant way. Um, and then 3 months into it, I'm in San Francisco, and it's like there's no knot. Everybody's fine. The house people are still meeting up on Sundays for dinners. Like nothing's missing a beat. And so it was this fear that ultimately could have kept me there versus like
Mm.
moving. And being beyond that, you start to see like, you know what? Like that's why we have planes. That's why we have FaceTime. That's why we can show up. Um, to
Mhm.
go visit family. But it really it was tough conversations, but it was the best thing that I did was move out and get into immersed into an ecosystem that gave me more opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah. And I
Yeah,
mean, it's real situations that you've had to deal with, that I've had to deal with. And, it all goes back to your passion, right? Where does your passion lead you? You have to, follow it.
that's
Um,
right.
and that's a great segue actually into the next point, which is strategic pivoting, something that you did, right? Or, just kind of transition out of the East Coast and immerse yourself into, the nucleus of the tech industry in the US.
Yeah.
So, do you want to talk a little bit more about, so for me, and just this is how I categorize strategic pivoting, because I've done a couple of them, is that middle step you take before the big leap, right? And
Mhm.
so I'm just curious, was there a middle step in between, well, in between just going out to San Francisco, or are there any other kind of middle steps you took before you transitioned to some of your,
Mm.
other entrepreneurial endeavors?
Yeah. Oh, and it's funny you mentioned middle step, and I can't stop thinking about that. And the thing that comes to mind for me is the side hustle, right? So for me, I as going back, I going back to the 16-year-old kid who was building websites for anybody, the church down the street, the bodega. I was trying to convince them to the website. Like that side hustle was just part of what I did. I never stopped doing that, right? Even when I was at Lockheed Martin, and even when I went to Google, there was always this thing about the entrepreneurial pool saying, you know what, like I want to go build something. And that middle step for me actually manifested in getting involved in things beyond quote unquote my 9 to 5. And
Mm-hmm.
that middle step was, you know what, like I'm like 1 foot here, and but I got like some of my foot is stepping out and experimenting and trying these things on, right? It's like let me try this on. Like I still got my 9 to 5, like it's secure. I'm the engineer at this thing, but you know what? I have this passion and I want to actually explore entrepreneurship. And it might look like on the weekends I am dabbling and building something for myself. It might look like for somebody else to take on a stretch assignment and say, you know what, I'm gonna help this nonprofit sort of turn around the entire marketing strategy because I want to step into marketing. And that middle step sometimes is actually adding more work, but it's necessary if you're trying to throttle both of these spectrums of, hey, this is my full-time job, this was paying the bills, was bringing security, but I also have
Mm-hmm.
this passion. And without that middle step, it's hard to build up the confidence to finally take that step. The confidence that you can say, you know what, like I can do this because I've been in this middle step for a while. I see some trends here. I see some potential here, and it just me. And it needs all of me, in order for it to really take off, right? And so for me, the middle step for me was maintaining my 9 to 5, my career path, but also dabbling with the entrepreneurship journey and saying, what if, let me go ahead and dabble here. That middle step then required me to take the full step into entrepreneurship.
Mm-hmm. I
Yeah.
swear we're kindred spirits.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I 100% identify, and I'll give it to you from this, this two different aspects of the previous situation. So when I was a financial analyst and was thinking about this leap, again, you know, I had that summit with my family and they're like, you're making so much money, right? And so that was a consideration. That was actually a factor that, you know, held me back a little bit. Like, I'm not sure. And so in order to somewhat bridge that gap, my middle step was to manage a rock band. So I convinced this rock band to allow me to manage them, and I booked them shows around New York City, and I pitched them and built an email list, all to just gain the knowledge, because I wanted to make sure that, you know, as much passion as I felt about the entertainment industry, I wanted to make sure that the work that you needed to do, that I needed to do, matched that passion. And I absolutely loved it. And that sold the deal for me, to transition to entertainment. However, as an entrepreneur, it was a little trickier, because for me, running an agency, I was looking at digital transformation. And so that's essentially turning my business into a tech product. And that, in addition to learning about tech, one of the things that I did, I guess, as a middle step, was to take on tech conferences as clients. And so that gave me a more of an inside view into conversations that, you know, successful tech founders were having, networking, and so that was kind of my middle step, because I think, you know, to your point, you know, you do as much, but then you have to take that leap.
Yeah. It's interesting. Angela, I go back to, you know, you're saying, like, you know what, my middle step is to go, you know, book shows and kind of like get in the door, kind of do this. I'm gonna cut my teeth here. When that shows up as like new territory, new work, but what we're doing is we're actually building on that inventory of passion, right? We started with, what are you passionate about? Okay, entertainment is what I'm passionate about. Okay, that means that my middle step is I got to get my hands in the mud and actually do what I can to keep building on that passion, right? I go back to when I was at Lockheed Martin and I was like young in my career. And this is back in the day, guys, when cubicles were cool. Cubicles were a thing, right? So it's like you're walking by somebody's cubicle, and I was in tech, doing some configuration management stuff, not the most exciting work for a creative mind. And I would walk by this, I remember her name, Joan Kelly. Joan Kelly's desk every day. And as I'm walking by, I see that she has these posters and these colorful things on the wall. And I'm like, and I'm walking by, you know, doing the whole presentado thing, right? It's like you're being newsy, you're like, you know, walking by, but you got your eyes on like what's happening there. And every day I would walk by her desk. And then one day I just stopped and I was just like, knock, 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 saying, hey, how's it going? My name is Roberto. And looks like you're doing some design work here. How can I help? And that conversation, actually, 1 year later, I was transferred from doing more of like engineering tech work to doing creative work within the same organization, within the same company. Now, this was Lockheed Martin, over 130,000 employees, right? So it's like multiple companies in one. And there was this one vertical that was tied to marketing, that was tied to creative, UX, design, the whole thing. And in 1 year, I went from doing this kind of work to helping Joan out on some projects, and 1 year later being full-time within the creative department, flexing my passions, being able to really unleash what I was designed to do, I feel. And so when I go back to the story of strategic pivots, sometimes it's leaning in and knocking on that door and saying, hey, like, what you're doing there is something that I'm passionate about. I can help you. In addition to what I'm doing, I can still be in this middle step and help you do this. And by virtue, it led to a door being open for me. And I started working in what I wanted to do. Right. And that was like, it's not as radical as folks might think it to be. Like, I need to go figure out all of these things. It's about keeping your eye out to the opportunities and saying, you know what, I'm not going to be shy about knocking on that door and saying, I want in. Like, can I get a shot? right? And that's what happened to me. It was one of those small moves, but really changed the type of the work that I did.
Yeah, I love that story. And again, kindred spirits. So I'll give you an example to your point. When I was at VH1, there was a digital network called VH1 Soul, which was just under the radar, but it was popular among the music industry because of the way that it was programmed and that it focused on, R&B and soul music, which that has a real audience. And so
Mhm.
because it was under the radar, I was able to, the person programming it kind of in my own way knocked on her door and said, hey, I'm working with influencers or working with, talent. Can I help you? Maybe we can integrate them into some of the programming that you're doing. And from that, I started working on VH1 Soul a lot more, and that actually bridged the opportunity to launch a network that's now called BET Her, and that provided
Mm.
me with a head of talent role, or head of influencers probably nowadays, role at that particular network because of the work that I did on VH1 Soul, really building. And what's also great about that is that you can bring a lot more ideas to the table, um, in these areas that may not be looked at as much but are growing. So I
That's right.
100% agree with you. I think there's something for everyone in this conversation because of
Yeah.
our experiences.
No doubt, no doubt. Okay, so kind of like recentering us, we talked about, what are your passions? Take an inventory of the things that really bring you life. Like, what are those things that, you're in this career, but really your heart is here, but you have these inclinations of doing more of a certain type of work. What does that look like, right? And take an
Mhm.
inventory and knowing those things, right? So for you, it was entertainment. For you, it was getting into that field. For me, it was like, yes, I love design. I mean, tech, but I actually want to like focus on design. That's a passion area. I think that's really important. And then second, we're talking about how do you then take the right moves strategically so you can allow doors to be presented in very, like fortunate ways for you, putting yourself in the right places in the right times, and leading to strategic pivots. But now let's get into the third part of our conversation, which is the fear associated with change and like the roadblocks that could come up during these transitions and get to the optimal state of where you want to do your best work.
Yes. And you know what? Actually, if you don't mind, I want to just go back and focus on something that you said. Just go back half a step and focus on something that you said that I
Yeah.
think is also important. It's networking, right? Especially, if you're at a senior level, tapping into your network to get those opportunities to do, whether it's a side hustle or to take on more work that leads you to another place. And I think that's important, as well as utilizing a platform that's, I think is probably, to me, I think it's one of the biggest platforms, but it's LinkedIn, right? So
Yeah.
that's with LinkedIn, you can network, you can get informationals, and yeah, it opens you up to opportunities. So I just wanted to make
No
sure
doubt.
that was said as well. But on to
Yeah,
fear.
but you know what though, just kind of just tack on to that a little bit. I think like a lot of folks, and maybe a lot of folks here listening to us today that are
Mhm.
exploring new careers and are transitioning from one to another, and maybe it's not a slight transition from like tech to designing in tech, right? Because that's like within the same bubble. But maybe you're going from, you know, um, accounting to marketing, or you're going from uh, a completely different industry, being a teacher to now being an engineer. Like that's those things are happening. And the beautiful thing about it is that we live in a day and age that if you want to learn something, it's just one click away. Right now, instead of Snapchat and TikToking and like Instagramming, we can use this device to change our trajectory of our lives to the education that we can like unlock from here, right? And I think that what we live in a world right now that it's fascinating to understand the level of opportunity that's only a focus away, right? The idea that I can go to Lambda School and take up engineering, the idea that I can go online and take Stanford classes free on entrepreneurship and or coding. Like these things were not available 10 years ago, right? And 12, 15
Mhm.
years ago. Now they are. And so I want to just take a moment, just encourage folks that are listening, that are here today, that are trying to figure out my next career, my next move, my next pivot, is lean into it, right? Knock on those doors. Like, we're about to talk about fear, because fear will keep you from doing so. So let's get into that, Angela. Like, what comes up for you when you think about fear, roadblocks on your journey? And it still comes up day to day, I would imagine, because we're always evolving. What does that look like?
Yeah, fear. So I've been through I always call it the elephant in the room. But yeah, I look at it from different aspects, right? It's like fear of failure, fear of what your family will say, fear of not being able to pay the bills, right? When you make a jump to entrepreneurship. And so one of the things that helps me to mitigate fear is what we've been talking about, right? We've been kind of stepping into that middle step, right? Gaining some experience or gaining some level of understanding of the next move that you want to make. It doesn't eradicate fear at all, because when all is said and done, to me, in my opinion, it's within yourself to take that first step, right? And that first step, I always think, is the hardest step, because that's the change step, right? Once you're in it, you're in it, right? And
That's right.
and ideally, throughout, forever. But it's just taking that first step. And I think when you take the first step, or you, like, for me, as someone who's done, a couple of pivots, that for the first pivot was tricky, right? And then the second pivot still had fear to it, but I felt like I had some experience from the first pivot. But either way, it's inherent upon me to decide to really make that first step. And that's, in terms of entrepreneurship, that's what it's all about, right? You have to take that first step. How about you?
My mind races at all the times that feel like, basically, like, our lives are a series of decisions, right? And some decisions are super obvious. Some decisions are like pretty black and white. It's like, yes, this is the better option, or no, this is the better. But there's a lot of pivotal decisions that are in the gray zone. And it's gonna have to, you have to put your heart into it in many ways and say, you know what, like, yes, this is in the gray zone. I don't really know with 100% certainty what's on the other side, right? I don't know what the outcome is going to be a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. When your family was saying, hey, you're going to entertainment, you're in finance, what does that look like 5 years from now? A lot of times we don't have the answers 5 years from now. A lot of times we don't have the answer 1 year from now. And so like, for me, when I think about all the times that I've had to make decisions, I've had to make decisions based on a passion and a conviction that I have about what I want to go do and the impact I want to have on the world, on my family. And really, if you leave with the conviction, it's going to mute the fear in many, many ways. The fear that your mind is telling you yourself, and the fear that's being thrown at you from those around you. And I think that that's one of the key ingredients is in kind of pushing through the noise and saying, you know what, like, I'm betting on me, right?
That's right.
Like you're betting on yourself. Like at the end of the day, you're gonna bet on yourself, because you're the one that's gonna get up in the morning once you made a decision and say, "Giddy up, it's time to go to work. It's time to do the work." Right? You're betting on yourself to say, "You know what? When I have to make a tough decision and my business is not going as I anticipated, I have to bet on myself that I'm going to solution that problem." Right? Or, "Hey, I just switched careers and it's harder than I thought." You have to bet on yourself to learn the skill faster than anybody else around you. Right? And so the conviction is going to come down to whether or not you believe that you can push through that fear to get to the other side of that opportunity. Right? And so, yeah. So Angela, that's what comes to mind for me, is like this. There's like a series, and I've been fortunate enough to. I've been married to my high school sweetheart. We celebrated 13 years recently, 20 years together, and having a thought partner. Thank you. Yeah, having a thought partner is important in these decision points, right? Somebody that you can trust, somebody that's got your back, somebody that believes in you sometimes more than you believe in yourself, right? Like, I think that I go back to my wife and I'm like, honey, you're supposed to be the one that talks me off the ledge of taking this crazy risk. You're supposed to be the one that says, no, 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 no. Like, this is good. Like, you have insurance, all these things. And it's like, most of the time when I come to her with a radical idea, she's basically like, giddy up. Like, what are you waiting for? And when you
I
have
love it.
when you have somebody like that in your corner, when you're supposed to go to her and it's like, you're supposed to talk me out of this crazy thing, and she's like pushes you for the more. I think we all need that champion in our corner that sometimes believe in us more than we believe in ourselves. And I think that continues to push us through the roadblocks and the fear and all those type of challenges.
I love that, and I couldn't agree with you more. And so although I don't have a husband, I do have that person in my
Yeah.
life that continues to encourage and push me, right? And so I think I agree with you. I think that is very important because, to be honest, like, you can start to, like, in crazy situations, you can start to doubt yourself, right? Or if you
Oh
want
yeah.
to do it, make a shift that may
Yep.
seem, crazy to everyone else. You have that person in your corner that is
That's right.
championing you. So I love that, and I love that you help contextualize, like, that first step that you take that's on you. It's you believing in yourself, right? Because that's the only way you're going to take the first step.
That's right.
Is that in your heart, with your passion, that this is the next, this is the right move for you.
No
So
doubt.
yeah, I
No
love
doubt.
it. I think that's
So
like
I think
yeah.
I think we're at time. And yeah, I want to echo
Oh,
that. Having somebody that's a champion in your corner. I think we're at 45 minutes. Correct me if I'm wrong. Am I?
we
Am
are. We
I?
are
We
talkers,
are.
aren't we?
We are talkers. Now I know. Hey, before you scramble off to another session, ain't no session hotter than our session.
I
So
know
I'm
it's
glad that you
growing, by the
guys
way.
you guys
We're
are
getting
here.
more people.
Is there any questions? I know that we're on our way out. Is there any questions? One thing I do want to encourage you guys, echoing what Angela said, build your network. Don't be afraid to ask for a favor. Don't be afraid to knock on the doors. Look, I'm gonna drop my LinkedIn inside of chat. Feel free to connect with me. I know that you can find
Yeah.
Angela's LinkedIn as well, her profile. If there's anything that I can do on your journey, please let me know. But yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them inside of Q&A or chat.
Yeah, likewise. I would love to, I'm open, available to answer any questions. I do. I should have my LinkedIn handy, but it's in my profile, or you can email me, angela@newfluence.com. Happy to chat with anyone.
Great. All right. It looks like
We've
that's
answered
a
all the
wrap. But
questions.
anyway, we have. Yeah, but at a high level, keep pushing, guys. Like, don't let to recap. Take inventory of your passions. Know what you want to get after. If you don't know, keep digging. Uh, think about the strategic pivots that you have to make, the moves you have to make, the middle ground, the middle step that feels like a lot in order to get to where you're going. And then lastly, don't let the negative self-talk keep you from opening up a door, knocking on the door, and make sure you surround yourself with. It's hard to find a ton of champions, but you need that one champion in your life that's going to push you to better, to push you beyond even the fear that you're contemplating right now. And I can't echo that enough. Angela, anything you want to say in closing?
Yeah, I just want to make sure in your recap to say that, to make sure everyone understands to bet on yourself, because that is going to push you to the next level. And yeah, having that champion in your corner, I can't tell you enough how much that helps. And yeah, so I think that's it on my end. Thank you so much, Roberto.
Yeah. Yeah.
This was great. I really enjoyed chatting with you
Yeah.
and continually learning more about you. And just, I mean, we are very much aligned, and I love your
Yeah.
story.
Same here. Same here. Thanks for taking time. It's been great. And
Yeah,
let's stay connected. Let's stay
yeah.
connected for sure.
I have your
Virtually.
number.
And we need to talk about the Gino and Pats. We need to talk about Gino and Pats. Pats is better. But
Yes.
there's this bodega on 8th and Butler in Philly, in the heart of North Philly, that'll throw you the best damn cheesesteak you ever had in your life, and it costs a fraction of the tourist spots downtown. So anyway, y'all
Yeah.
can thank me later. But yeah,
You got to
good to
name
be
it.
here. Yeah, good to be here. Have a great time, guys.
Thank you,
Enjoy your
everyone.
time.
Appreciate it. Bye.
Yep. Bye bye.